In the previous couple of episodes of Unsealed, we opened up two of the Lord of the Rings games for the PlayStation 2 from Electronic Arts. First, we looked at Lord of the Rings The Two Towers from 2002, which covered both the Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers movies. It's an action-adventure game where there's a lot of melee combat, a lot of experience point earning, a lot of skills to unlock, and some really cool extras from the movies, which I thought were pretty fantastic. This game, despite the fact that I really wasn't a big fan of the movies because they were too long and I never read the books, this was the game that really gave me the what I needed to know about the Lord of the Rings in a more fun format. At least that's the way it was for me. The following year, we got the third movie in a game. This is The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, which I opened in the last episode. This game was molded in the same fashion that The Two Towers was, except that Stormfront Studios, the development team that put together The Two Towers, was not in on this project. They moved on to develop a game for Atari called Demon's Stone, which was based on the D&D universe. So this was done by EA Games by themselves. This game, while it's generally the same thing and it may look slightly better in spots, just didn't have the impact. It didn't grab me like the last game did. So while I did play it a little bit, it didn't hold my interest long enough for me to finish it. It's a game that at some point I do want to get back to, but it's a game that I never did finish. So with these two games, we don't yet have a trilogy, do we? There were three games that EA released for the PS2 that were based on the Lord of the Rings movies or franchise. So, without further delay, we're going to get to the third installment. Now, this third Lord of the Rings game, is completely different from Two Towers and Return of the King. It is not an action-adventure game. There isn't melee fighting, per se. This is very much an RPG, like a turn-based RPG, modeled kind of after Final Fantasy X, which, depending on who you talk to, is either really awesome or not really so good. People are kind of back and forth on Final Fantasy X. I'm in the positive camp. I actually liked Final Fantasy X quite a bit, but there are some people that didn't like it either because the story was just stupid, the voice acting was bad, or they just thought that the game had a bunch of padding. In any event, I liked Final Fantasy X, so when I heard that this next Lord of the Rings game was shaped with that game in mind, I'm like, yeah, go ahead, bring it on. And the game I'm talking about is The Lord of the Rings, The Third Age. This game was released, I want to say, in 2004, so this was released just a year after Return of the King was. And this is not a direct movie tie-in game. This kind of brings all three movies together in its own way with completely different characters. We're not using the same characters, although if I remember right, you do have intersections or interactions with some of the main story characters. So this is the most exciting RPG since Final Fantasy. At least that's what the tagline at the top says, and that's from EGM. So that's pretty strong words from EGM, which was still a magazine very much during this time. So you battle alongside members of the Fellowship in an adventure spanning all three films in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Journey through Middle-earth with 6 new playable characters from the movies. Customize your heroes with an in-depth skill tree and over 500,000 weapon, item, and armor combinations. 500,000. More than that. That sounds crazy for an RPG. All new turn-based combat system gives you a new level of strategic control over combat encounters. I'll get to that in a minute. Adventure with friends in cooperative multiplayer mode. I never did this. I've talked about this, I think, before, but video games for me are 99% a solo activity. I do play in the rare 1% with other players, generally locally. I don't do anything online, and even when I do play locally, it's very select. Mostly sports games or game show games. I never thought to play an RPG like this with another player. Stunning special effects and voiceover from the original actors bring the cinematic feel of the films to life. So again, we still have the film's main actors, even though they are not the main characters per se in this particular game. Wreak havoc as the Balrog, a minion of Sauron, or other enemies in an expansive minigame. So that's what we have here. Again, one more look at the back of the case so you can see some of the screenshots. I know it's tough to see with my lousy webcam, and you can see some of the characters here as well. So this is, as it says, it is an RPG. It's a turn-based RPG. It is very similar to Final Fantasy X, and it's one of the reasons why I like it so much, especially with turn-based RPGs going kind of by the boards, especially in more recent years. Final Fantasy XII with its weird gambit system, and then Final Fantasy 13 with its paradigm system didn't feel the same to me. This feels more like a game that's like a Final Fantasy game but in a different universe, and which is why I enjoy it so very much. I enjoy it so much, in fact, that I have, and this is not something I do too often, I actually have the strategy guide for it right here, Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. And inside, this is a new strategy guide, by the way. When you open it up, I actually have the collector cards still in here. I haven't taken them out. There are, what does it say, 36 collectible strategy cards inside. So they are all here, as well as a really cool walkthrough if you need it. Now, the game is not all that difficult, so you don't necessarily need this to play through it. But I thought it was a cool thing to show off because it's still in great shape. And this is now 15 years old, this particular strategy guide, and it still looks like it's brand new. So let's go ahead and let's open up our copy of The Third Age here. So here it is one more time. We have the seal on the top, LOTR, The Third Age. Thankfully, this is a legitimate new copy of the game, unlike a copy that I bought from Amazon. And you can see the Lord of the Rings logo or seal of authenticity just underneath the PS2 logo there. So let's go ahead and open this up, and we will see what we have for the instruction manual, and I will talk a little bit more about my experience with the game. Let's see. This is going to be one of those that I wish I had my scissors, isn't it? Go ahead and make your jokes. This is kind of a running thing with these videos. But here we go. Plastic will not defeat me. There we go. Take that off there just like that. And we'll take the seal off. Now, this was at a time in 2004 where instruction manuals were starting to become more and more lean, and you started to learn a lot more about a game just by playing it. I don't necessarily know how I feel about that. While I do like the fact that it's more inviting to just pick up the game and play it rather than reading an instruction manual, I have to admit that I would much rather have an instruction manual that I can read on the side than just to kind of learn everything in-game. When we open this up, there we go. This does have a CD or a DVD, I should say, that looks just like the cover of the instruction manual. This is another one of those cases that does have the memory card holder in it, so if you want to bring this to a buddy's house to play with them or to kind of walk through the game with them as a second set of eyes, you certainly could do that. The instruction manual is not very expansive. It's only 13 total pages, and page 12 only has saving and loading on it. It is in black and white, but you do have a list of the characters that are in the game. Barithor, Idriel, Elagast, Hadhod, and they're basically modeled after characters from the Lord of the Rings movies. They're basically like stand-ins, kind of, sort of. But this, if you haven't played this before and you're a fan of turn-based RPGs, I can't recommend this particular game enough. While it is a bit on the easy side, the turn-based combat is a lot of fun. Going off the beaten path a little bit and looking for treasure chests and other kinds of loot is a lot of fun. Battling monsters, I think, is fun with the turn-based system. Some people think it's kind of a brain-dead system, but for me, I enjoy that. It doesn't require a ton of thinking, but at the same time, there are some strategic elements that need to be involved in order to play the game well. The game looks pretty good, I think, especially on a CRT. I don't think this has progressive scan. It doesn't, although this game supports THX and Dolby Pro Logic too, so if you have a nice sound system, this game kicks a whole lot of tail if you want to listen to that in your stereo. So that is a look at all of the Lord of the Rings games from EA for the PS2. This is probably my favorite, if I have to be honest. While I do like the Two Towers and I like the action in that game, I like this a lot more because this I can play more at leisure. It's not a lot of pressure, although there are certain boss battles that certainly bring that pressure to you. And it's very easy to play for anyone of any skill level. There is an easy option, so if you're new to RPGs, kind of like a Mystic Quest, this is much easier to play on that setting, and you can make the game harder if you so choose. So I do recommend this. But all of the Lord of the Rings games, honestly, if you're a fan of the movies, whether it's on the PS2, the Xbox, or the GameCube, are certainly worth playing, if for no other reason than to revisit Middle-earth and revisit the wonder that we all felt for this series back in the mid-2000s. As always, I thank you very much for watching this and all of my episodes of Unsealed. Don't forget, you can check out the playlist on my YouTube channel, and you can catch up on all now 77 episodes of Unsealed at your leisure, and I certainly have more to come in the days, weeks ahead. I certainly have more content planned. Thanks for watching, everybody, and until the next time, my friends, see you later.